Witness intimidation, accusations of bullying and harassment, leaks to the media. Hi, this is Drew Wilson, and today I've got a heck of an update for you on the situation with Bill C-11. So, as some of you might be aware of, Bill C-11 is currently going through the Senate hearings, and it was sort of known as a pre-study briefly, then it just became a regular study because I guess the Senate hearings didn't start until Senate's sitting days didn't hit until the 19th, but these hearings started a week earlier, so there's that going on. So I was going to do a recording on the actual hearings themselves and talking about, okay, what's going on with them, that sort of thing. And then this kind of thing blew up, so I guess I'll kind of give you a bit of a skinny on what's going on in the Senate. Essentially, there's been a lot of witnesses that have stepped forward, and they're basically lobbyists, so broadcasters, organizations representing broadcasters, different broadcasters, independent broadcasters, lots of other organizations like the unions that were basically trying to push forward with, all of them were fighting for Bill C-11. And I think the idea for many of these lobbyists was that by the end of it all, because they've had numerous waves of these lobbyists going through, and that they would have this hard and fast, clear-cut case for Bill C-11, and it needs to be passed yesterday, that sort of thing. And there's no real question why we need this bill, and there's no counter-argument to this. Well, that really didn't happen. And instead it was a lot of basically swing and a miss, swing and a miss, swing and a miss. So essentially they were trying to say that we need to level the playing field, this is about fairness, and once they started straying from their talking points, that's when the arguments for Bill C-11 really started to fall apart and why they need it. So yeah, there was all these comments about how they want to, get funding for themselves so they can survive, and then it was well, if this is about funding, then maybe we should talk about subsidies. And no, we don't want to talk about subsidies. We want to talk about this. And it became circular arguments that were really vague, and they didn't really mean much of anything in the end. And the case for Bill C-11 started getting weaker and weaker as the rows upon rows of witnesses worked their way through the system. And then there were panels actually of people who were actually opposed to the legislation as well. There weren't very many, but there were a few. One of them was the digital rights organizations that were fighting against this. There were 2 hearings from platforms. There was a hearing from the privacy commissioner. There was a few for sure, and basically they issued comments like, here are the criticisms we have, these are the problems, we think that the discoverability requirements go too far, it'll hurt the ecosystem, we contribute to the economy, etc., etc. And once those arguments were presented to the lobbyists, because they had plenty of witnesses come in after them, and they presented those arguments to them, and the argument, the support for Bill C-11, the arguments for it just quickly fell apart. Like, you introduce this criticism and they were just evading the questions and trying not to answer it, or either that or just dismissing it altogether as just fake news, that sort of thing. Like, there was no real solid counter argument to what critics of Bill C-11 had. So that's basically what was happening up until recently. And I think it was yesterday, as of this recording, probably a few days ago now, that you probably see this being a few days old video. But essentially, one of the hearings was going to involve a couple of digital first creators who really hadn't had a chance yet to make their case at the Senate level. and Scott Benzie, who basically is the director for Digital First Canada, was basically kind of come up next. And hours before that he was going to testify, there was a story that managed to make its way to the Globe and Mail. And the Globe and Mail had this article about how this Liberal MP was calling for an investigation, and unfortunately it was also Regwald. So luckily I was able to read the article anyway. And so essentially what it was is this these allegations that the organization was not being above board with their lobbying records. They had all this funding that they're kind of keeping secret. They questioned like the Buffer Film Festival as well, and saying that there was something untoward going on with that. Like there was all these wild allegations. And so obviously this took Benzie by surprise. Like, where did this come from? And so he, of course, went to the lobbying commissioner and probably asked questions along the lines of, okay, well, what's going on? Is there something missing with the paperwork? Is there something that is there data that you don't have? Is there an investigation? Like, what's going on? And so the lobbying commissioner actually came back and said, there's no investigation. There is nothing untoward. Your paperwork appears to be in order. Unless you want to add something, have a nice day. So if the lobbying commissioner is saying that everything is above board, yet this article came out, then that puts a lot of questions to the article in question. So and then we start going into the timelines of when all this happened. So this article came out just hours before the hearing that he was going to partake in took place. And there was this letter that apparently was sent to the lobbying commissioner, and that happened about 2 months ago. So it was really suspicious, like maybe nothing became of it, but they wanted to make something of this, so they leaked the stuff to the press. At least that's what some people were saying, is that they leaked all this information to the press anyway, to basically try and intimidate Benzie as well as anyone else trying to criticize Bill C-11 and say these are valid criticisms that we have, and here's why we think this bill needs at least tweaking or deleting sections or stopping the bill altogether, etc., etc. So there was a lot of questions, and as it turns out, this letter was sent by none other than Chris Bittle, Liberal MP Chris Bittle. And I've been following this debate for quite some time, and yeah, that name, yeah, I know all too well now. And let's just say Bittle has a history. And essentially, one of the things I saw was that during the House of Commons hearings, when they had all these witnesses coming forward, and some of them were digital first creators, and he basically questioned the veracity of the witnesses and basically accused them of saying things that weren't true, essentially. And Darcy Michael was one of them that was on the unfortunate receiving end of all this. And what happened afterwards, like, it's one thing to have this happen in the committee hearing or in the House of Commons hearing, but to have that that member of parliament basically track them down on social media afterwards and basically harass them afterwards for that was kind of on another level of, okay, calm down, this is not worth it. But Bittle did it anyway, and so he was asking, like, well, what section is problematic? And Michael Geist at that point stepped in and said, section 4.1 and 4.2. These are the sections you asked. This is the answer. And I guess Bittle was enraged by this, and he started being argumentative. So basically the back and forth ended there. So there was actually a history of witness intimidation already with this guy. And a second incident I'm aware of has to do with the organization that the second one was actually his comments about sexual assault being conservative filibusters. So essentially this stemmed from the Hockey Canada thing, and at the time they're about to break for the summer. And there was two things going on at the time was the Bill C-11 going through and the sexual assault accusations that were going on with Hockey Canada, and whether or not funds were used that were taken from taxpayers and to pay off all these settlements. So a very legitimate reason to investigate. And basically, I guess Bittle was really mad about this and basically called this whole thing conservative filibuster. Like, no, this is a serious incident. It needs to be investigated. And as you can tell by the media afterwards, that, yeah, it was a serious incident and it was treated seriously. They looked into it. And a third incident was had to do with this anti-hate organization, and essentially this member of this anti-hate organization, which a lot of people called the organization, like he is the organization, was basically charged. The organization itself was charged with guiding the liberal government to fighting hate in the country, and basically they were providing like this advisory role, and they had a contract and everything. And I guess this guy was making all these anti-Semitic tweets on Twitter, and yes, these observers were warning the government, okay, this should be looked at. What's going on? What's your response? That sort of thing. And I guess the liberal government ignored those warnings. So after months of warning, and then I guess Michael Geist actually picked up on this and said that maybe we should look into this. And when he picked up on it, I found out about it. I didn't know about this, that this was going on before Michael Geist picked up on it, but I picked up on the story as well. And then the media started asking questions, okay, what's going on with this story? And it was at that point that the government severed ties with this organization. And you'd think it would be the end of the debate, but then Chris Bittle stepped in and I guess accused Michael Geist of being a racist by saying, well, why are you blinded by hate with Pablo Rodriguez? Is it because one of the ministers involved, it looks like this, and he has a picture of Minister Hussein, who is a black minister. And Michael Geist responded, well, I'm the son of Holocaust survivors, and didn't think it was too much to ask to have people on this file like say something, well, anything about this, and instead I have this secretary guy who basically calls me racist. And yeah, that story blew up, and Bittle did issue an apology afterwards. He apologized to Michael Geist. He deleted the tweet, and he gave this detailed tweet about his actions. And I thought, okay, well, maybe this will finally cool things down, and we can kind of go back to a more normal debate. And then Bittle afterwards, a day later, basically went running to the media and said that Michael Geist somehow bullied him into falsely accusing him of racism, which was the most bizarre thing ever, really. So, yeah, to my knowledge, that's what the history of what I've witnessed with Bittle is. Like, he's done a lot of really questionable stuff, and I remember at the time thinking, okay, dude, seriously, anger management. Just consider anger management, because there's no reason to get this up in arms about something like this. But now you have this witness intimidation thing. The letter leaks to the media, and how do you survive something like that? I'm questioning, okay, is this guy gonna survive being a liberal member for much longer, because he's caused so much damage in the PR front? And after I wrote a story about what happened, there has been some developments, and those developments were involved like members of parliament rising on a point of order, asking maybe we should look into this, what happened. Apparently in a Senate hearing I have yet to monitor and kind of do an analysis of, but evidently there were senators that were basically expressing disgust of what Bittle did. But the good news is that the hearing went ahead, and witnesses didn't appear to, I guess, weren't that intimidated by all this, and they gave their testimony anyway, despite what happened. And yeah, that's really wild stuff that was going on throughout this whole debate so far. And I've seen a lot of weird stuff coming from the Heritage Ministry, and I think this is the first I've heard about witness intimidation like this before. So yeah, that's my first, critical updates on what's going on. If you want to help support me, you can subscribe to my Patreon page, patreon.com/freezenet. You can subscribe to a Coffee page, coffee.com/freezenet. You can check out our website, freezenet.ca, and I'll leave some links in the description below to kind of, if you want a more thorough understanding of what was going on with some of the points that I was raising here. So yeah, I guess that is all for now. And until next time, keep it cool.